My name is John Passfield. I'm going to read from my Babe Ruth novel. The title of this video is Babe Ruth Video 4 Questions, Questions, Questions. We all question ourselves as we go through our daily lives. We're all questioned by other people, spouses, bosses, friends, enemies, if we have any. Questions, questions, questions. How do questions affect us? How do we deal with them? Do we accept them and try to answer them as legitimate questions, or we reject them as, hey, off topic, nothing to do with me? Why should I be answering these questions? Nothing to do with me at all. The cover is this, Out of the Park, The Cogitations of Babe Ruth, a novel by John Passfield. I'll get back to the question topic in a minute, but here's the overall summary on the back of the novel. It's what the whole novel deals with. On October 1st, 1932, an aging Babe Ruth stands at the plate in Wrigley Field, Chicago, and grins at the shouts of a raging, hostile crowd. His knees ache, but his focus is still on the ball. He fights off a swarm of thoughts. His first year as a Yankee, now in the past. His record of 60 home runs, now in the past. His 2 wives, his money problems, a million questions about when he's going to hang up his glove. He's looking for his next big hit to prove that he still belongs in the game. The pitcher's eyes are burning. The crowd is a frenzied roar. He raises his arm and points at the center field fence. In the other videos I've mentioned, King Lear moment, on the heath, pelted by the storm, trying to not only survive that moment, but figure out what your life has been up to now and what it should be in the future. And that's Babe Ruth standing at the plate amid this roar of the crowd, thinking, thinking, thinking. The novel is 16 chapters. It's in 3 cycles. 1920, his first year as a Yankee. 1927, difficult year, but he comes through with the 60 homers. 1932, does he still have it, or should he leave the game? And whether or not he comes through is kind of the grand climax of the novel. But in this video, I'm going to focus on just one element that runs through all 16 chapters. But I'm only going to read a short section of the novel. So the topic of this video is questions. Surely Babe Ruth questions himself. What human being does not? I chose him as a topic for a novel which explores the role of thought in our lives and everybody's lives, because he is an exaggerated version of the lives that all of us are living. There are 2 sources of questions about our lives, those that originate in our own minds and those that originate outside of our own minds, asked of us or implied perhaps by someone else, but which then take their place in our minds and our thoughts and demand to be answered or to be rejected as not worth asking or too dangerous to ask. So we have to evaluate everything that comes into our minds, some of which, one element of which is the question element. We all face questions, internal and external in origin, as we move through our days and through our lives. Ultimately, whatever the origin, these questions become a case of one compartment or level of the mind questioning another compartment or level of the mind. So there's a constant dialogue going on in everybody's mind between and among all these various levels of thought, trying to kind of get a kind of a unified sense of what our lives are all about, what they could be all about if we make a few changes perhaps. So in this reading, we'll listen in on the questions that are in the mind of the main character of this novel, Babe Ruth. As we do, we can ask ourselves, is he answering them or ignoring them? If he is answering them, is he better off answering these questions? If he's ignoring them, is he better off ignoring these questions? What is the best way for Babe Ruth to live his life? The questions run through the whole novel, as I said before, but this reading will focus on the final 3 chapters. So, and now to the reading. I'm going to start with chapter 14. It's on page 209 of the novel. Chapter 14, Spring 5. So it's the 5th chapter in this cycle, which takes place at the Polo Grounds, New York. This is pre-house that Ruth built, pre-Yankee Stadium. July 19th, 1920. So when he's a new Yankee, is he going to come through? Well, this particular chapter is after he has hit this, what he considers to be a breakthrough home run. Lots of struggles, media down on him, fans wondering whether he's just a big flop, a failure who came over from Boston with lots of fanfare. He's finally hit one. And it's really fascinating that baseball has an element that no other sport that I know of seems to have, and that is this, that when a person hits a home run, in a sense, the game stops. That home run can't be taken away. The fielder can't go up in the stands and get the ball and throw it to home plate. Okay, so the game stops in a sense. It's in the record books even, but the game is still going on at the same time, because if the runner doesn't go around to all four bases and touch those bases, he's out. So it's a fascinating phenomenon. So it gave me like three final chapters: the 1920 final chapter, the 27 final chapter, and 1932 final chapter, where he's jogging around the bases, both playing the game and not playing the game. The game is still on, but it's over in a sense, and doing his thinking, coming to some conclusions perhaps about all the things he's been thinking of for 16 chapters. So, okay, the 1920 final chapter. Now I know I'm going to be all right, jogging around the bases. Now I know I'm going to do all right in New York, knowing I can play in the biggest town in the whole wide world, proving I can play in the biggest town in the toughest league in the greatest game, knowing that I got what it takes inside to help me do it, hitting my 30th home run and feeling just fine. However, still nagged by questions. Here are some of them. Do you realize that there's still half a season left? Did you ever imagine that you'd be able to break your record so soon? How many home runs do you feel you'd be able to hit this year? We have that phenomenon where somebody wins a Stanley Cup or a Super Bowl, and the first thing they're asked is, are you going to retire or whatever? And most of these players say, hey, wait, I'm in this moment right now. Why don't you ask me something about right now instead of next year, tomorrow, or when I retire? 212. How do you account for your amazing season? Do you feel that there really is a livelier ball this year? Some people say, oh, well, the Babe Ruth era, it was a change in the ball. Well, okay, but everybody can be measured as well as Babe Ruth in terms of hitting. But I'll leave that. It's an interesting topic on its own. Do you believe that your success as a home run hitter will change the nature of the game? Being asked to analyze things. Are these media figures capable of analyzing all of society? A lot of them are being asked to do so. A lot of them feel they can. They're all getting screen time, which they're not paying for, and telling us all about how society should work, or does work, or shouldn't work. 214. Do you feel that you can be a greater all-around player than Ty Cobb? How would you compare yourself with other baseball players? Who do you feel has been your closest competitor? Page 215. So how does it feel to bring the whole stadium up off their seats and cheering like this for you? How does it feel to be the best batter in the history of baseball? How does it feel to be the most exciting player in the game? Well, not everybody would agree, eh? Some would rather see Ty Cobb or somebody steal a base. 217. How does this compare with some of your other home runs, Babe? Was that the most satisfying home run you've ever hit? Any predictions as to what you will manage to accomplish in the rest of your career? So, constantly being asked to think and respond. We are always asked to think. We're all asked always to think and respond. Here's the end of that particular chapter. Jogging around the bases, figuring I know how to play the game from now on. They better not look for no bunt or no steal when they're facing me. Just give me something I can hit and then watch what I can do. From now on, I'm putting them all right out of the park. Well, the title of the novel, Out of the Park. On to chapter 15, another image arc, image cycle in the novel. It's the 1927 image cycle. Chapter 15, Summer 5, the fifth chapter of 1927. Yankee Stadium, New York, September 30th, 1927. The beginning of the chapter. Doing pretty good for myself, setting all kinds of records, feeling fit and strong and powerful, figuring I know who I am, what I've done, and what I can do. None of these injuries, aches, and pains ain't gonna stop me. showing them other hitters what it is to be on top. But still, these nagging questions, some of them for his own good, perhaps, some of them for his detriment if it takes away his focus on what is most important in his life for him to figure out, for you and I to figure out in our own lives. Did you predict that you would hit 60 home runs this year? Were you going for the record all along? What do you think that this has been such an exceptional year? Why do you think, I should have said. Another one. What's the secret of your hitting prowess, babe? Do you work at it, or do you just get up and to bat and hope for the best? Would you say that hitting is a science or just a natural gift? Another one, page 225. Would you say that this is the ultimate possible baseball achievement? Is there anything in baseball you haven't done? What could there be in baseball after this? Another one, 226. How does this compare with some of your other home runs, babe? What was the most satisfying home run you ever hit? You think that this will settle the argument about you and Ty Cobb? The argument was who was the greatest baseball player of all time. Ruth had some opinions on that one. The thing about setting a record is that it makes you want to do more. You want to tell everybody, hey, I ain't done yet. Don't stop the game. I'm just getting started. Just give me something I can hit, that's all I'm asking. There's a lot more pitches that I'm going to put right out of the park. Did I mention the title of the novel? Chapter 16. This is Autumn 6, and it's the last chapter of the novel. It's the outer frame of that 1932 game where he holds up his finger. Did he point to center field, or was he simply saying, give me one good hit? Controversy rages on in the year 2020. Page 229. Chapter 16, Autumn 6, Wrigley Field, Chicago, October 1st, 1932. I ain't so old as I thought I was, jogging around the bases. I dug deep down inside, past the aches and the pains and the liniment, and found what I needed. I got the hit that proves I'm still in the game. Media questions? Would you say that your life has been one long avenue of triumphs? Have you had to dig deep inside yourself at times? Do you feel that you have realized your potential? Well, tough questions, eh? Tough questions for the smartest people in the world. And I don't think Babe Ruth was a dunce at all. He had a very complex mind, but did he access the deeper levels of his mind? That's the question. But the question of the novel, the questions on the page, they'll ask him to do so. Page 232. How do you account for the fact that you're always able to rise to the occasion? Aren't you afraid that after this everything will seem to be downhill? Does this milestone mean that you'll finally be willing to retire? Page 233. Is the public Babe Ruth pretty much the same as the private one? Of all the relationships that you've had, which do you feel has been the most important? Well, he spends the whole novel thinking of all the relationships, the wives, the managers, the person who looks after his publicity and his money, and so on. Do you feel that baseball is in any way a metaphor for the human condition? Well, he may or may not know the term metaphor, but maybe his mind is able to think that way without the terminology. Who knows? 234. Is there a brotherhood, do you feel, among those who play the game? That's a fascinating question. Muhammad Ali's autobiography is fascinating in terms of the two giants facing each other in the ring. Are they brothers, or are they enemies, or are they brothers hyphen enemies? Fascinating. 235. Is there perhaps any moment in all the many moments of hope and disappointment, of triumph and defeat, that you would say defines you as a human being? Well, that's the question of the novel, right? And it's the question of the main character's mind in the novel at a very deep level. And it takes 16 chapters to just go over the evidence, I guess you could say. Do you ever look back to your early days in New York? One of the cycles of the novel. 236. You must get tired of people asking what it must be like to be a great man. So where would you place yourself among the greatest men who've ever lived? Would you compare yourself to Shakespeare? To Michelangelo? Or Beethoven? Well, does Babe Ruth know who they are, or if he knows who they are by a name? Does he know much about them? But it's the task of every main character in serious literature to evaluate himself. Eh? Speak of me as I am. Nothing extenuates, says Othello. I'm not a dime a dozen, says Willie Loman. Hamlet says, report my cause aright to the unsatisfied. Like every main character in serious literature has a task, and that task is to evaluate himself accurately based on all that has happened to him up until that final moment in that drama. And here's Babe Ruth. Who do you compare yourself to? How do you evaluate? So what is the standard by which you are evaluating yourself? And then what is your conclusion as to whether you've met that standard or failed to do so? A character in a piece of serious literature being asked to evaluate himself. And maybe Babe Ruth does so, maybe he doesn't. Page 238, last passage in the whole novel. Jogging around the bases, a couple of steps from home, winking at everybody and giving a salute. I drove the Cubs right back down into their dugout. None of them Cubs is winking back, but it don't matter what they're thinking. Ain't nothing they can do. From now, that ball is right on out of the park. Okay, good point to mention the title of the book again. Out of the Park, Cogitations of Babe Ruth, a novel by John Passfield. I want to just read a passage and then a couple of websites. Here's a passage, two passages, I guess, from my notes I have ready here. I'm fascinated by the whole concept of thinking. I'd love to explore the interactions between the conscious and the subconscious minds, both of which I believe operate on many levels of thinking simultaneously. I cannot believe that a person of Babe Ruth's prodigious accomplishments can have had a dull mind. And in this novel, I explore the relationship between the very surface of the mind, which is apparent to all who come into contact with such an individual, and the computer-like complexity of the subconscious mind that allows the human body to work with such extreme precision in the mind-body partnership, making decisions which much require the processing of thousands of items of relevant and irrelevant data as it arrives at each microsecond decision. So his mind was amazing in its ability to assess the situation, the ball coming at him, and make the split-second decision. All the things that should be thought about, all the things that shouldn't be, all the factors that should be taken into account, all the factors that didn't count, didn't impinge on the situation. So was he a dunce like everywhere else in his mind? Good question. But here's the imagery by which he is able to think. Is it the imagery by which he is thinking? Here, meaning the novel. Hey, the novel contains all the imagery which Babe Ruth could be thinking with. Is it the imagery that he is actually accessing and thinking with? Here's another passage from my notes. I'm attracted to the Babe Ruth story because he was a man of exceptional achievement who refashioned his field of endeavor in order to make it congenial to his particular talents. Unlike others, he rethought the basic tenets which passed for wisdom in his particular life role. Are we talking about who? Bill Gates or Steve Jobs? We're talking about Babe Ruth. He rethought the basic tenets which passed for wisdom in his particular life role and achieved the most basic understanding of his trade in order to refashion the game to suit his particular skills and his particular way of thinking. Well, not a bad accomplishment, but we all do this, though. I don't really want to talk about Babe Ruth as so exceptional that he's not like you and me. We take the world we live in and we refashion it to suit us, or try to, or should, or we fail to do so. So he's simply an exaggerated version of what everybody is, what you and I do, what we do with the world as we process it in our minds. So the novel, held up just one last time, but Out of the Park, Cogitations of Babe Ruth, a novel by John Passfield. It's available on Amazon. If you go to my website, there's 2 free books that talk about this novel, johnpassfield.ca, johnpassfield.ca. a planning notebook. You click on notebooks, you click on the icon, you get a whole book for free of me working my way through the process of writing this novel. If you go to the same website, johnpassfield.ca, click on journals at the top and go down to the icon, Babe Ruth icon, you get my journal, which is me reflecting on many, many topics: thought, conscious, subconscious thought, sports and their relationship to the lives that you and I lead, and novel writing. And all these topics come into that. As I polished the novel, I just thought of topics and wrote about them. And lastly, I'll say thank you for watching this video.